Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished entrepreneur from California, USA, Mr. Jeffrey Harris. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. I appreciate it.
Jeffrey is the co-founder and CEO of Plant Power Fast Food, which is also a vegan version of McDonald's. So Jeffrey, as I mentioned to you just before we started recording, I've been a vegan myself. So I'm fascinated with the kind of work you're doing. So let's start talking Plant Power Fast Food. Tell me about this venture.
Well, basically what Plant Power Fast Food is a vegan or plant-based version of traditional fast food restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
So we look very much like Burger King, Jack in the Box, McDonald's, and all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And the menu is very similar. So we have burgers, fries, shakes. I'm using my air quotes, chicken tenders, all the way to a healthier grilled chicken wraps, salads, children's menu, a breakfast menu. It's really like walking into one of these major chains, but everything is 100% plant-based, which means it's much more sustainable. It's cruelty-free. It's also free of cholesterol, and it's plant-based, so it doesn't have the ill health effects that eating animal products brings.
Amazing. And what was your motivation to start this venture?
You know, I personally became a vegetarian when I was 14 years old, and I thought I was the first one. And my joke now, of course, I tell people, well, there were probably a few 100 million of them in India, but I didn't know at the time.
Okay.
And then I became vegan later in life in my 30s. So I was primarily personally motivated by the idea of reducing animal suffering. And I think that what most people who are eating animal products, they are unconsciously creating suffering. They're not bad people. They don't want to create suffering, but they're supporting a system that in fact creates unimaginable suffering. So I spent about 30 years of my life in the professional audio industry, working for the last 20 years with Harman International, and did okay for what I would call an old hippie, and built a nice corporate career and was able to buy a house and a nice car. And I had good things in my life. But I asked myself at a certain point, what would I really like to do if I could do anything? And that was the question I posed to myself. And this kind of idea kept coming up. We'll build the worldwide vegan version of McDonald's and influence millions of people and take millions of animals off the plate. And it was a crazy idea, but it wouldn't go away. And after searching for a few years for a partner that might be able to help me, and even though I've worked in vegetarian restaurants as a young man, I wasn't really an entrepreneur before, and I needed somebody with some operational experience. And after years of searching, I found my partners, Mitch Wallace and Zach Voga, who had that operational piece. But it basically sprang from the idea of taking the fast food business, which is not very good for everyone's health or the planet or the animals, and kind of turning it on its head by doing a plant-based version.
Amazing. Amazing. So, when I was reading about you, Jeffrey, you have two separate businesses. You manufacture and you retail, which is, stores and your whole brands and everything else. So how do you handle, and building one business is tough. You're building two. What have been some of your challenges in each one of them?
Well, first of all, we built the manufacturing business to support the restaurant business. So although we see the possibility of doing a consumer packaged goods play with some of our products, we're very excited about it. We're very much laser focused on being that kind of vegan version of McDonald's. So when we first started out, there weren't many products that you can get out that you couldn't find vegan honey mustard dressing or vegan ranch dressing or any of these things. It didn't really exist. So we went out to basically create all of the sauces and all of the dressings that we use in our restaurants. Furthermore, we created our own chicken product. Back then, we were using Gardein protein substrate, but we would cook it and form it and create it ourselves in the back of each restaurant with the sauces and dressings. And then we found that the commercially available veggie burgers out there, we didn't want to co-brand with Impossible or Beyond, because we wanted to create our own brand. For those who may be new to this, Impossible, Beyond are the rock star brands of veggie burgers in the US and everywhere else. And we also needed to hit certain price points. So we basically found an excellent provider of GMO-free, soy-based kind of burger stuff and shaped it and printed out patties and flavored it ourselves. So basically, after our second restaurant, we realized in order to grow to the degree that we wanted to, we needed to simplify operations. And we basically opened what was a 2,200 foot manufacturing facility not too far east of San Diego, which has since grown to a 23,000 square foot facility. And we basically started manufacturing. Now, while that happened, while the main idea was to manufacture for our restaurants and to get better at it and to be able to produce more and more quantities at a higher and higher quality, Whole Foods, which is a major natural food grocer here in the US, they picked up one of our products for local distribution in Southern California, one of our cheesecake products. And now we do have people talking to us about getting into the consumer packaged goods business with some of our sauces and dressings. But we have a team that does the manufacturing because that's what they know. They're good at it. They run the facility. It's world-class. Myself and my CFO and my COO, we monitor that business and make sure it's not losing money. It's not designed to make a lot of money because we want to get the products to the restaurants as inexpensively as we can. And we found ourselves being a manufacturer. And then we extended our capabilities by beginning to partner to do R&D with some very good co-packers in the US, and also starting to outsource some of our manufacturing with co-packers, so that rather than opening up a bunch of manufacturing facilities throughout the US, we basically start to develop a network of partners we can work with, so that as we expand our restaurant business, we'll have the capabilities of providing all the products we need without spending a huge amount of revenue and resources on new factories.
Amazing. And how many restaurants do you have now?
So today we have 11.
Wow.
So, and when friends say, wow, that's amazing, I can't believe you got that far. I said, well, we're about 489 short of our goal right now. And we have 4 more in development. So by the end of this year, we'll have, I think that's 15 restaurants. I got to do my math correctly. And of those, interesting, at least 9 will be drive-throughs. Okay. So it was very important for us to differentiate ourselves from fast casual and from some of the other similar brands who are not opening drive-throughs. We really wanted to be in that drive-through convenient McDonald's type space, even though of course we have some great restaurants that don't have that. So 15, 2023 we'll be opening more. And then in 2024, we really start to scale.
Wow. Well, good luck. And I understand that you're going through a fundraise right now.
We are. Yeah. And I have to say to any entrepreneur or CEO that's listening, this is the hardest thing that you can possibly ever do.
Absolutely.
Especially in the early stage when you haven't proven yourself yet. So we had a number of seed rounds early on to kind of fund individual restaurants. We don't do that anymore. All the investment goes into the parent company now. And we finished our Series A raise in April of 2021 for 7.5 million. And now we're doing a modest Series B for 15 million so we can accelerate our expansion. And we're very excited about it. We enjoy the process of finding partners that both understand the market segment and the growth of this kind of nexus of fast food and plant-based, and who also have an interest in sustainability or impact or doing good things in the world. So even though fundraising is always challenging, it's always such a joy because the kinds of capital partners that we enjoy meeting are people that see the opportunity from a business perspective.
Correct.
But they also have passion for the impact possibilities as well.
Amazing. So now let me move and ask you a few more generic or general questions on vegan and vegan products. Let me start by asking you, Jeffrey, how large is the market for vegan products?
It's very, very big. So in the US, as an example, first of all, let's differentiate. So vegans and vegetarians in the US are probably maybe 4, 5, 6% at the most, right? Even though veganism is growing year on year by huge leaps and bounds, maybe even 300 or 400%, it's still a small portion of the population.
Correct.
What we've identified is that our market, and the interesting market, is what we call the flexitarians. And the flexitarians are the veggie adjacent or the veggie curious people that are, if you give them a great bacon cheeseburger that's plant-based, they'll try it. They're probably eating more salads to be healthier, but they haven't necessarily sworn off animal products yet. And that has grown year on year. So in the US right now, The flexitarians are now considered to be 35% of the population.
Wow. Okay.
It's huge, right? And then among people under the age of 35, a lot of recent studies have shown that may be as high as 60%. So what we're seeing in the US and in other Western countries, because, vegetarianism, as you know, goes way back in India. But in the West, we're seeing what we really see as a mega trend. And there's a few parts to it, but one of the parts to it, the big thinkers understand that if we fast forward on this planet 25, 50, 100, 200, 300 years, a population on this planet eating mostly a plant-based diet is the most reasonable and sustainable way for our civilization to survive and grow, considering climate change and resources. So veganism is growing by leaps and bounds, and so is vegetarianism. Also in the US, the growth of vegan products is just gone through the roof. So it's believed to have grown over 43% in the last 2 years alone.
Wow.
So what I'm talking about now is obviously that's not powered by vegans and vegetarians because there's not enough of us.
Correct.
So, and we're not talking about people putting more broccoli and carrots in the refrigerator. What we're really talking about is more and more people are getting, Morningstar Farms, vegan sausage or bacon. I don't know if you're familiar with that brand there. Impossible or Beyond Burgers, Gardein chicken. So people that are not vegans and vegetarians are buying more of these products in their homes. And we're seeing this massive trend at the grocery store. Now, when I grew up, you couldn't go to the grocery store and buy much in the way of plant-based. But now you can get oat milk, you can get vegan breakfast sausages, you can get tofu. And so the world's not just at the natural food grocers, but almost everywhere. So we're seeing a major trend, and where it's showing up is in the grocery store, which leads to our thesis, right? Our thesis in the US was if fast food in the US is 280 plus billion, and if 35% of the US population are flexitarians, then the real opportunity is not just in consumer packaged goods, but it's actually right there in fast food where most of the animal products consumption exists. And that's been our thesis. And frankly, for years, no one believed us and they thought we were crazy. And then when our friend Ethan Brown at Beyond Meat partnered with Carl's Jr., and then the Impossible Foods folks got with Burger King and on, a lot of the major brands have now, in fact, added plant-based options to increase their sales because now the whole family can come in. The vegan daughter and the vegetarian brother and all of that.
Fantastic. So my next question is for the many, many young people who will be listening to us. What are the advantages of becoming a vegan?
It's a great question. There are many. So I can speak first from my own personal experience. And I'm going to get just a little bit spiritual with you as well. First and foremost, from my point of view, understanding that when you're eating animal products, you're creating suffering. So when people say what the advantages are, very often it's natural for us to think, well, what are the advantages for me? But I think one of the ways we can look at that is, well, what are the advantages for the animals? If you refuse to participate in a system that is creating a lot of suffering, we may not see that suffering, but it's happening. So the first thing I really believe is a clear conscience. So I believe as that we live in alignment with our compassion and our heart. And look, it's not easy it was easy for me, but it's not easy for everyone. But as we kind of hear the calling of our heart and as we endeavor to become kinder and more compassionate people, and then we live in alignment with that, there's something very beautiful that happens, I think, spiritually. I think we start to connect with a part of us that we may have had to shut down to be able to participate in something that maybe is not in harmony. So that's a real obvious advantage. From a health point of view, we now know that the consumption of animal products is responsible for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, heart attacks, obesity. Cooked meat is now considered a carcinogen, and certainly nothing that we understood as young people. And so it's very, very easy to see that eating a plant-based diet is a healthier option. And now I understand also that having one of our bacon cheeseburgers is not quite as good as having a beautiful organic salad of plant-based whole foods. But for people that are on a journey of change, we want to create a bridge for people to experience many of the possibilities of what plant-based eating might be and enjoy those benefits. So there's, I think, the heart, the compassion, there is health and wellness for sure. A very brief story. A friend of mine who's not a vegan or vegetarian went to one of our restaurants and he said, "Hey man, I had the Big Zac. That's our double burger, right? I had shake, I had fries and the chicken tenders. And I actually walked out of there feeling light, feeling wonderful."
Amazing.
Now I thought to myself, I would be napping for a month and I'd have to be on my exercise bicycle for a week. But for him, it was a huge shift not to feel that heaviness in his body and have his blood affected by all of that.
Amazing.
And the last piece, I think, is sustainability. And when I became a vegetarian and then vegan years ago, we didn't really understand the impact of animal products on our planet. And there's a few dimensions. Number one is it's actually the major cause of greenhouse gas emissions, which I found shocking because I would think it's coal stacks and transportation. But if you combine methane and carbon dioxide, it's actually animal agriculture. It takes 10, 20, 30 times as much resources, water, grain, corn, all of that to create a quarter pound of beef than it does a quarter pound of a plant-based patty, as an example. So when we look at resources and climate change, it's also the right thing to do. So for me, a plant-based diet is both, it's health, it's spirituality, it's awakening, it's sustainability. And I always advise people take baby steps. But ultimately, if you look at the data and you educate yourself, and if you listen to your own heart, you might find that it's a very beautiful step to take in your own life.
What a great response, And I've often heard this from people where they say that we are using the most expensive way of trying to convert plant-based diets into protein and then eating that animal for protein when we can get the protein directly from the plant.
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing.
I mean, the big question they always ask is, where do you get your protein? And it's a hilarious question for vegans and vegetarians because, elephants, water buffalo, gorillas, the biggest, strongest animals in the world, blue whales, right? These are all vegans for the most part. And it's very, very easy to get protein from hundreds of sources, but it's you're right. It's an ineffective way to create protein.
Well said. So, Jeffrey, you also spoke about animal rights and cruelty-free diets. You're in this business. How relevant are these topics in the minds of human beings?
That's another really, really great question. Well, it comes to the idea, we could use some definitions for a moment to explore that. So, for example, I happen to be a vegan, and I've had people say, "Well, what about your belt? And what about your shoes? Is that leather?" And I say, "Actually, no, it's not." So that's a decision that I made not to do that. There are also people that would define themselves as plant-based, and they're really all about health and wellness and being better athletes and living longer lives. And then, of course, there are, environmentalists that have understood the connection. What I'm finding is and this is generalizing, and I'm not a social scientist, but it seems to me that a lot of younger people and also a lot of women kind of understand the cruelty-free dimension of this. And I always enjoy asking people, and never without any judgment, I'm just curious, what inspired you to be a vegan or to be plant-based? Because I like to hear people's answers. So I am finding among a lot of younger people and a lot of women, because I think they're very grounded in compassion. I often hear people say out loud, they're not afraid to say, it's for the animals.
Wow.
Interestingly, among men, for many years, it wasn't cool to say that because guys are trying to be tough and macho. And I would have a lot of guys that I knew in the corporate world that were experimenting with being plant-based. They would specifically say, it's not for the animals. It's just for me. I just want to be healthier. But my experience has been, once somebody has really gone on a mostly plant-based diet for a while, wherever they started, the other elements begin to open up as well. So I started from an ethical point of view, and I was still eating vegan junk food. I was a vegetarian first. So, pizza was fine, and grilled cheese sandwiches, and vegetarian donuts. I guess all donuts are vegetarian. And then years later, I discovered, through being on that journey, brown rice and tofu and real vegetables, and wow, this is amazing. And salads. Conversely, I've met people who started with the healthy foods and maybe even the raw foods.
Mm.
And then after being off of animal products for a while,
Mm.
what happened was their consciousness changed.
Mm.
Their bodies were changing, their consciousness was changing. And what they were able to see is things that they couldn't see before or didn't seem important to them before. And often those folks will begin to understand the cruelty-free dimension and advantage to a plant-based diet. So I think everyone's different. I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I love talking to people about it.
Wonderful. Jeffrey, I have time for two more questions. My next question to you is a widely held myth, at least I've heard this many times, that vegan foods are primarily coming out of soybeans. And there's not enough options available except eating more and more soy, and soy has its own set of issues. I'd love to get your perspective on this.
Well, first of all, regarding soy, it's really an interesting topic, right? There's a few things going on, and I think that each person needs to listen to their body to understand the impact. Like I love tofu.
Correct.
But I've noticed sometimes it doesn't really feel good in my body. I'm so sorry to say that, right? And so for many, many years, before we even called them veggie burgers, we called them soy burgers.
Yeah.
And soy was the magical protein of the hour. And in the 60s and 70s, I think that most of plant-based food was really, or meat analogs, right? Plant-based chicken or burgers or bacon was really made from soy and also wheat. And things like that. And so that's interesting. That's changed a tremendous amount. Right now, for example, Beyond Meat, they don't use any soy at all. And they're the number one vegan burger company in the world. And they've got beef jerky, and they've got burgers, and they've got all sorts of product that's made from pea protein.
Okay.
And what a lot of people have discovered is that pea protein has a better effect on their body. There's also a lot of plant-based milks now and protein supplements based on hemp or pea protein or even protein that comes from brown rice.
Wow.
So it's really diversified quite a lot. The vegan cheeses are cool to look at because when I was younger, I thought they were great, but most real cheese eaters would have told me I was crazy. Now it's really, really evolved into a process with fermentation and enzymes, and it's amazing. And you see a lot of plant-based cheeses made from cashews or almonds or hemp, and so it's actually diversified quite a bit, and the industry is attempting to accommodate a growing population of people who are interested in plant-based but actually do not want to consume soy, either because they're having their own negative experience of it or because they've heard negative things about soy. I will say the soy debate is ongoing, and there's a lot of debate about it. And as a years-long vegetarian and vegan, I can't help but wonder if some of the noise out there is created by the meat industry trying to kind of delegitimize plant-based options.
Absolutely. And my last question to you now, Jeffrey, and again, this is for the many people who listen to us. What would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away based on your incredible experience as a vegan manufacturer, retailer of vegan products, and all the amazing stuff that you've done all your life?
Thank you for asking that. Now, I could take 3 hours to answer that, but I won't.
Okay.
I think one of the most important, I'm going to mention a couple of things. First of all, in terms of being, learning to be a leader or to be an entrepreneur, or to be an activist, or to be a visionary, or to be a politician, whatever you might want to do in the world, the biggest lesson I've learned is how to understand the limiting factor of fear, anxiety, feeling small, and then how to approach that and turn it into feelings of love and unlimitedness and hope and faith. And so I think this is a struggle that every single human being goes through. But if we want to have an impact in our own life, in the lives of people around us, or in the world, ultimately, we need to find ways to understand fear or anxiety or a sense of limitation when it comes up, to analyze it, to look beyond that, and to understand that each one of us really does have a lot of unlimited capabilities and superpowers. And this is real. I used to hear things like follow your bliss. And now I understand how important it is. It doesn't mean the journey is easy. But I think that if we keep returning to love, I think that fear and love can exist in our consciousness at the same moment. And if we can keep learning through meditation or spiritual practices or being of service or being a better husband or wife or parent or friend, we can learn to get closer to our heart where there's great power. And with that power, there's many beautiful things we can do in the world. But the second thing I want to say relates back to the first, and that is, I think having the right intention is important.
Correct.
So I can't claim to be beyond ego or greed, right? I hope that my business does well. I hope I make a lot of money. I hope I can take a nap one day.
Absolutely.
Or go to the beach. But I also understand that if I hold an intention for everyone to win, my partners, my team members, our guests, the animals on the planet, if I keep having an intention that's bigger than me, that also creates a magical possibility as well. And now I'm sharing it because it's not easy. I'm sharing it because it's hard, but I'm also sharing it because it's powerful and it has an impact and it transforms our lives really from the inside out.
How wonderful. Jeffrey, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. This conversation has been so amazing. I've always believed in veganism, but I think you have just reinforced all my beliefs that the direction I took. I've been a vegetarian since I was born, but veganism is completely different from my perspective. Thank you for talking to me about your industry, and good luck with your capital raise. I'm sure it'll go places. And one of these days, I'm hoping to see that we'll have a plant power fast food restaurant in India.
I'm thinking about it.
You must do that. Thank you for talking to me about some of the lessons. Finally, we didn't get a chance to talk about your love for India. You've been here to 2 ashrams and you've said that you will come back again, but we'll keep that for another conversation sometime. So thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck, Jeffrey.
And thank you so much. It was an honor to be able to speak with you and to share with your guests. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.